My name is Kristen Clark. I'm the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division at the U.S. Department of Justice, and I'm joined today by Acting U.S. Attorney Matt Kirsch, FBI Special Agent in Charge Mark Mahalik, and ATF Special Agent in Charge Brent Beavers. Today, Anderson Lee Aldrich was sentenced to 55 life sentences running concurrently, plus 190 years without the possibility of parole for the brazen and calculated attack against innocent people at Club Q on November 19th of 2022. This was one of the most violent, hate-fueled mass shootings targeting the LGBTQIA+ community in our nation's history. The defendant's actions killed 5 people, seriously injured dozens of others, and caused untold anguish to many. This tragedy runs contrary to our most basic American values, respect for the sanctity of life and the intrinsic worth of every human being. The attack took place on the eve of Transgender Day of Remembrance, when members of the LGBTQIA+ community and their allies gathered at the safe haven of Club Q to celebrate some of the most vulnerable people in our society. It is a sad irony that the attack demonstrates why the event was necessary. Today, we convey our support for the victims of this horrific act, for their loved ones, and for members of the LGBTQIA+ community. The lives needlessly cut short that day, the pain inflicted, and the trauma imposed are beyond tragic. This sentence, while severe, cannot undo the harm inflicted on that day. The victims and survivors, Club Q patrons, employees, and artists were attacked when and where they least expected it. That was the defendant's plan. The defendant visited Club Q at least 8 times prior to the shooting. The defendant knew the layout of the club and was at Club Q an hour and a half before the shooting, and was aware that many patrons and employees were there for Transgender Day of Remembrance. Prior to committing this heinous crime, the defendant created a website to post videos espousing racist ideology and discussing racially motivated mass shootings. The defendant used online platforms to spew anti-gay and anti-transgender views. The defendant made over $9,000 in weapons-related purchases from at least 56 different vendors. And then, armed with an AR-15 style weapon, the defendant murdered and harmed innocent people in their safe space. When the bullets stopped, Club Q looked like a war zone. Survivors of the shooting are still living with the pain and physical impacts from the shooting, requiring them to spend hours with doctors and burdening them with medical expenses. Many of those impacted continue to endure trauma as a result of the defendant's actions. We know that today's severe sentence can't bring back loved ones, heal injuries, or dissipate the lingering trauma, but today's sentencing should send a loud message. We will not tolerate hate in our country, and purveyors of bias-motivated violence will be held accountable for their actions. Those who seek to consummate their hate-filled ideas through violence better think twice. We vigorously prosecute hate crimes cases to vindicate the principle that every American, regardless of their sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity, has the right to live freely without fearing violence based upon bias and hatred. That principle is carved in stone, literally, in the inscription of the U.S. Justice Department, where I work every day. It says, "Liberty is maintained in security of justice." And that principle is why this prosecution of hate-motivated violence stands as one of our highest priorities. The conclusion of the criminal case arising from that attack comes during Pride Month, a celebration of LGBTQIA+ people who seek to live openly and authentically in our country. Pride Month is also a reminder about the work we must do to ensure the promise of dignity and freedom for all. The reminder could not be more stark today, a week after the anniversary of the 2016 attack at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. It should galvanize all of us to action and heighten our vigilance against the forces of hate. I want the entire LGBTQIA+ community to know that the Justice Department stands with you. We remain steadfast in our commitment to using the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act to stop these hateful acts, to protect you, and to hold accountable those who dare to threaten, injure, or harm you. In America, no one should be subjected to hate or violence because of who they are, what they look like, or who they love. In closing, I want to thank our team of federal, state, and local law enforcement partners and federal prosecutors who worked together on this important case. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Matt Kirsch. I'm the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Colorado. What Defendant Aldrich did at Club Q was horrific. It was an act of violence against the LGBTQIA+ community, but it was also an act of violence against all the people of the state of Colorado. I want us to remember that today's sentencing was primarily about the victims of the defendant's heinous acts. I also want to acknowledge the many friends and family of the victims who were present during the sentencing hearing today. We mourn their losses, and we know that nothing that we can do can make them whole again. But we do hope that they can take some comfort in the justice that was meted out today. I also want to acknowledge, as Assistant Attorney General Clark did, that we are in the middle of Pride Month. But as Judge Sweeney noted during the sentencing hearing today, we know that the LGBTQIA+ community is stronger than the defendant in this case. And those in that community should know, as Assistant Attorney General Clark said, that both the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Colorado stand with them, not just today, but every day, every year. As part of today's plea, the defendant admitted to committing acts of hate against members of the LGBTQIA+ community. I want to make it clear that we have no tolerance for hate in this country, and we have no tolerance for hate crimes in Colorado. I hope that today's sentence demonstrates to the victims and to the many others touched by this horrific crime that we will not tolerate hate-fueled violence against anyone, anywhere. I also want to acknowledge the outstanding work of the prosecuting attorneys who worked on this case. AUSA's Allison Conity and Brian Fields, their supervisor, AUSA Julia Martinez, and from our partners at the Civil Rights Division, trial attorney Mara White. I also need to acknowledge the outstanding work that our law enforcement partners did in order to make this case happen. That included the Denver FBI field office, the Denver ATF field office, as well as our partners at the Colorado Springs Department, the El Paso County, and the El Paso County District Attorney's Office, both of whom have also sent representatives to be here today and continue to support this prosecution. They worked exceptionally hard, and their continued resolve to seek justice in this case helps us protect our communities from acts of hate. Thank you to all of them, and now I'll turn the discussion over to Special Agent in Charge, Mark McCullough.
Good afternoon. Standing here today, there's nothing I can say that hasn't been said since that awful night in 2022. And there's nothing I can say that can undo the harm and destruction caused by one person's actions. 5 lives were lost, and the list of additional victims is lengthy. There are those who lost loved ones, those who were physically harmed, and those who are still recovering but will live with the scars and the memories of the trauma they experienced. What happened that night also lives with first responders, the greater LGBTQIA+ community, and the citizens of Colorado Springs. Hate crimes are not only an attack on the victim, but they are meant to threaten and intimidate an entire population. But in the case of Club Q, the response to hate is what endures. Today's proceedings acknowledge the pain the defendant caused to so many, while putting those fueled by hate on notice. Your crimes will not be tolerated and will be met with severe consequences. The FBI and our law enforcement partners stand united in condemning hate, supporting victims, and holding perpetrators fully accountable for their actions. It's our heartfelt desire that the conclusion of this legal journey will mark a notable milestone in the path toward continued healing for all those affected by this unconscionable tragedy. Club Q now resonates across Colorado and throughout the nation as a symbol of resilience. And the survivors have shown us that they will not let fear and hate define them or their futures. They inspire all of us with their courage and determination to honor those we lost by moving forward with hope and love. And it's now my privilege to introduce a strong partner to the FBI, to law enforcement, and to the community, the special agent in charge of the ATF field office in Denver, Brent Beavers.
A little more than a year and a half ago, the LGBTQIA+ and Colorado Springs community were devastated by a hate-fueled mass shooting at Club Q. ATF responded immediately, as we do to almost every mass shooting in America, to offer resources and partner with local law enforcement. ATF conducted emergency firearms traces, provided laboratory services, and other partnership-based operations for the Colorado Springs Police Department, El Paso County District Attorney's Office, FBI as mentioned, and of course the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Colorado. We owe deep gratitude to the heroes without hesitation and great personal risk that stopped the attack, and first responders who were there immediately. They saved countless lives. Everyone deserves to live their lives without fear for their safety or security, and ATF will continue to work tirelessly every day to protect these basic rights for our mission and to prevent and combat violent crime. In closing, ATF continues to offer our sincere condolences, resources, and support to the survivors, victims, and the community as they continue their journey of healing. Their lives mattered, and we'll never forget them. While today's sentence cannot undo the harm, we hope that it provides some part of closing. Thank you for having me.
All right, we will take a few questions. A number of victims today said that they wanted the death penalty in this case. Can you explain the decision about why not to seek the death penalty?
For each death-eligible offense, a wide range of factors are considered, and the specific deliberations are internal to the Department of Justice. We are pleased with the severe sentence issued by the court today, 55 consecutive life sentences plus an additional 190 years with no possibility of parole.
Did the majority of victims want the death penalty?
We don't disclose internal deliberations of the department.
When you ask your question, if you'll please state where you're from. Jaleesa Rosari, 9 News. What's your message to those victims that feel like this wasn't enough and that they did want the death penalty?
Hate crimes have no place in America today. We understand the grief and pain that families and victims continue to endure as a result of this tragedy, and we hope that Today's severe sentence provides some small measure of justice and will stand by this community as they work towards healing in the road ahead.
Maggie Bryan with KOAA. Where will the shooters serve their sentence, federal or state?
He's currently in state custody and will remain in state custody.
Colleen Slevin from the Associated Press. Just wondering if you can explain why the Justice Department wanted to pursue a case against this defendant since they did plead guilty in state court. Is that unusual, and why did you want to do that?
There was an important federal interest to be vindicated here. The Justice Department sought to make clear that this was a hate-motivated mass shooting. This defendant targeted Club Q because of the actual or perceived gender identity and sexual orientation of the victims. These kinds of heinous crimes have no place in our society today. Fighting hate crimes is one of the Justice Department's highest priorities.
So you wanted to make that clear. Was it clear in the state case because of the Alford plea?
That's correct.
Yes, sir, right here.
Zach DuPont, The Gazette. Did Aldrich's decision to plead guilty in the state case lean into the decision not to pursue the death penalty in this federal case?
We don't disclose the internal deliberations of the Justice Department, but again, there was an important federal interest to vindicate here. This is one of the most heinous mass shootings targeting the LGBTQIA+ community, and today justice has been served.
I have one last question, yes, sir.
Vicente Arenas with Fox 31, just a couple points of clarification. Which prison system will he serve in for the duration of his sentence, and can he appeal?
I'll answer your second question first. He waived his right to almost all appeals in connection with this plea agreement. Your first question, we expect him to serve his sentence in the Colorado Department of Corrections. However, if there were some issue that would arise with respect to his convictions in state court, he would then be transferred to federal custody and would serve the federal sentence in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. You're welcome.
Thanks all. Thank you very much.